You'll all be happy to be associated with him during the seminar and after. And he's also been with the Chinese market, having dealt in Chinese business. He owns a factory there. So he'll be a great help to what we are going to speak today and later. Sri Lalita is a doctorate in management, and she also carries a huge amount of experience both in the professional and the academic sphere, and has dealt with not only China but Japan, Vietnam, and other Far East countries. So her contribution and help during the session and beyond will be of immense help to the MSME. As far as I'm concerned, I've been dealing with the China indirectly because I had a very smart Guju boss who said, let us not learn Chinese, but let us depend on somebody who knows Chinese. So we have been successful in the Chinese market for more than 25 years, getting very good supplies. I can tell you a lot of stories of how the Chinese fraud or rather cheat people, but we had a very good run without any problems. And Deepa has been instrumental in getting me a lot of research work done. So as a part of our team from Tenora, we present you this session, which will be quickly run through slides. And before that, give you a taste of Chinese. I like Mr. Azam to speak to you a little about what China is in 2, 3 sentences. Mr. Azam, please.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. First of all, Mr. Suresh Iyer, thank you very much. And thank you, Dr. Ramchandran. And also, I thank my colleague, Mr. Vishwanathan.
Actually, I want you to speak all this in Chinese, so let them not understand. Okay.
大家好，我喜欢今天特别热情的，谢谢大家今天给我这个计划，跟你们说我自己的中国的我的经验。That's okay. I think it's enough. I just thank everybody in Chinese.
I think Azam, we could have started with Wan Shang, Hao Shan Shang.
Yeah, Hao Shang Wishi.
下午好。
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 Yeah.
Yes, sir. So I suggest let Dr. Ramchandran first speak because he's our senior.
What we will do is we will start the slides first. We'll finish the slides and then we'll have the presentation one after the other.
Sure.
So we have this topic called Mimic a Dragon. I don't want to call it Mimic a Chinese company because it is in all good faith that we have Chinese called as a dragon. Some facts of China we must know. China snatched the #1 slot in economic terms. It overtakes America as the world's largest automobile market. It has the highest number of mobile phones in the world, has all this high. I'm sharing the slides with you. You can have a look at it later. It all speaks about how China is gained in the world market. China is second only to US in research. China starts healthcare reform. Now, China was in isolation for almost 200, 300 years from the 17th century. And in the last 40 years, it has really gained traction because when it isolated from the world, it really went very, very low in its economy. Nobody knew how far and betrayed the Chinese people were. Till the last 40 years, it all started. And the story is phenomenal. China opened the world's longest bridge over water, China launches mission. Now, if you look at any sphere of activity in science, technology, commerce, military, China has been really going ahead in terms that you and I cannot even fathom. Now, interesting pictures about China. Why I'm showing this? Because we know a history about China, which is in isolation, and the 1,000 years of a story that they had. Always military conquest was their posturing inside China all the time. Now, this is China for you. It looks all peace, tranquil, all the magnificent things that you can see today. It was not there 40 years back. Can you see the marvelous train station, metro station? If they build something, they build something in scale. And everything is something which is far ahead in terms of luxury and superiority. But at the same time, they are the people who bring out mass production items, which you cannot even say value for money. It's a use and throw. I'll give a very nice example later. Now, this is all about photos of China, which you can see, just to see how China has grown. They have converted an old submarine of Russia, brought it from Russia and converted it to a 5-star hotel. That's what China is all about. So China didn't have a labor law until 1994. I'm just telling you what all they didn't have. Now, if you go for searching for a small lamp or a small bed sheet or small things that you want in China, you'll get at least 5,000, 6,000 companies supplying you. Go to Alibaba, that's the spirit. Not like India, we'll have 20, 30 companies to supply. In China, everything is scale. More than 5,500 will make you an MP3 player. More than 11,000 companies produce T-shirts. You check back in 6 months and these numbers will have risen. Everything is about numbers. The Canton Fair, which had started in 1957, was China's window to the world. And that's how it started opening up to the world, and people noticed China is a great hub for manufacturing. So I'm leaving some of the slides fast so that you just understand. Today, China has even been able to capture the dollar, and it's positioning itself as a currency leader in the world. So if you look at how China has done it, it is through purely economics, and then through military, then through political, and now it's currency. So let us look at what parameters we would like to compare. What is a Chinese MSME unit like? How many people work on an average? How much time or shift? So for these slides, we'll quickly, wherever is possible, I'll pause and ask Vishy, Azam, and Sri Lalita to contribute. How much time or shift is each for a factory? So Vishy, can you tell when do the Chinese companies start working in the morning?
Well, they start working at about 8 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
They normally have their breakfast prior to 8 o'clock. They start working at around 8 o'clock. 8 to 11:30, 12 is what they would normally work. Then after that, they would take a gap of about an hour. And this I'm talking to with reference to the textile industry because I hail from the textile industry. Azam would possibly tell you more about the steel industry and the others, which he is more familiar with. I'm familiar more with the garments and the textile industry. And the working environment goes deep into almost till about 6 o'clock in the evening. They do have breaks, but not that they don't have breaks, but they do work for a period of 8 to 10 hours easily. Am I right, Azam?
Yes,
Yeah.
Vishwanath, what do you have experienced? I have experienced the same.
Yes, and as far as the overtime is concerned, they do gloss it out. They just put it on paper, but they don't pay and they don't.
There does not exist a concept of an overtime.
Correct. They have to work. That's it.
That's it.
Yeah. So industrial policy is now very different. Pricing and quality is all controlled by the military and the government, rather government. Government concessions are almost skewed up because every entity, by and large, unlike India, it is not an owner managed. It concerns the government. Somewhere it directs to the government. The language is spoken, unlike India, multi-language, they speak only Mandarin, and worst comes worst, the one person who speaks English by chance gets hooked up by Indians and he becomes a connecting point for the Chinese. The impact of English, there's no impact of English in China, even today, even though they're learning lots numbers. The role of police and mafia, you all know it. In India, it's a different world. They come to collect only the weekly protection money, harafta. There, the whole business is protected by the government. So you can understand what difference it makes. Competition point, and in China, every other company for us looks the same. We do not know whether they have competition within, but we only know one thing, that they all cobble up together to beat in world global competition. As far as forex is concerned, they have huge amount of FDI advantages, and their reserves against various countries are high.
I would like to like to interfere when you talk about competition.
Yes.
In China, it is observed very clearly that they possibly would cobble up companies together to form a supply chain management. What happens is that if there is one company which is on the world scene and they take up an order, they would normally give these orders to the smaller companies who would then make it as a sub plot for the main company.
Correct.
So what happens is that they'll never leave an order out and they'll make certain that any order is completed within a time by giving these to various other smaller companies.
Correct. So they have that patriotism. They're committed to themselves, and they know how to beat a global competition. They want China to win. That's a very, very great economic patriotic fervor that is there. So coming to exports, we know how they kill the export market. They dominate. They just dump in huge, huge quantities. I mean, for them, it's Midas, right? Ability to do any product. You ask Chinese people to do any product, they will say they will do it. Why? Because their tooling costs are low, their back-end processing is low, they have all the backward integration in various products. Their raw materials for every conceivable product in the world, they have it. Unfortunately, unfortunately, they can source it also. Scale. I mean, you can talk of scale like ever before. Vishy was talking to me about how they do scaling. I mean, for them, 1,000, 2,000 is nothing. When you talk of 500,000, 1 million, that's the way it is. That's why Apple is making their mobile phones in China. Because for them, look at the mask. They make 5 million masks a day. Today, we need that mask. Decision making, unlike India, we don't have their multiple decision making approach. Everything the government takes, and unfortunately, for any Indian company, we will not know in that company who's a decision maker, who's the big man. A small person working at the lowest level could be the swinging factor for us to help that get into that company. Banks and NPA. The banks and NPA concept is very different in China. The banks don't work in the way banks work here. And the NPA concept is not there in China as much. With the factory closes means the government has either closed, taken over, or made it operate for something else. Society aspects. Society aspect is there as much as in India, but it is not in sync, or it doesn't overlap with the economic activities. In India, if somebody loses a job or loses a business, they are frowned upon, they are looked down upon. In China, we do not know what happens to that person. It is all it's all hidden. We do not know the stories. Hit and run approach to marketing. They don't care for longevity of a product. They don't care for brands. They only want other brands to come and be with them, and they'll make for them. But they are not into branding. But if you look at recent histories, UI and other companies have got into some sort of a branding. They don't have regrets to quality. I think this we can speak endlessly in this session. When we speak, we'll talk about it. They are shameless in cheating. They don't mind cheating again and again if it's required, because there's no punishment regime as far as these corporates are concerned. When somebody cheats outside world, then nobody is there to punish them. There's no international laws applicable easily. Copyright infringements is very rampant. Frauds happen very easily to outside companies. Small to medium to large projects, tendencies to compromise quality. That's why you see many bridges falling, many of the tracks getting cracked up. You see a lot of masks not working properly, a lot of injections not working properly. But yet, Apple is producing. The state-owned factories and captive workers, we'll talk about it a little later. Sheila Lita may all three will speak about it. There's no rules of industrial relations and ILO. There's a violation of carbon emissions and Kyoto Protocol. Of late, they're doing a huge amount of work in afforestation. They're going to convert more than 2,400 square kilometers into green zone. That's a huge effort that they're doing. Company operations, marketing, sales turnover, location of factories, sourcing, packing, all this typically what the Indian companies struggle, they don't have that at all. The government is in control. So if you're looking at the Indian mindset, now look at all that is favoring the Chinese is only make, produce, sell, and sleep. For them, as for the food also, they eat anything. For them, there's no vegetarian, non-vegetarian. Everything is eaten there. But an Indian company, an Indian mindset, to become Chinese is a huge mountain to cross. We have the ethics, we have religious, we have family-minded, we have less commitment, we have low risk-taking ability, we are worried about the future, we worry about food, we worry about family, we worry where the funds are coming from, and we have this kya farak padta attitude. And that winning attitude is absent. We don't become collectively strong to win over a market. For example, if America is coming for Apple, we all should have got together and said, come and make in India. We'll make the same Apple in the quantity and volume and the value as China is offering. So we'll, in India, we will cheat, but we are not like the Chinese. We go into jail. And when we come back, again, we cheat. So that's a very different ballgame we have. We are neither afraid of government nor as an internal drive for great manufacturing push. So far, 70 years, we have not done, but slowly it's coming. We are very weak in negotiation. China, very, very strong in negotiation. You cannot beat a Chinese in negotiation. Either when it comes to selling at cheap price, they will throw the thing and go. And when they have to stick to a price, it's an art to deal with them. Indian currency is yet dependent on dollar. Their currency is not so much now dependent on dollar. So this, again, I'm not going to talk too much on this because this is for you to read later. All these points which I'm not covering. So the do's and don'ts which are here for you, it's like a checklist for you to keep all these slides, the next 5-6 slides are for all of you to keep it and read it and build your companies to how you want to take it further. I will only say this, don't neglect any level of government central provision local in Chinese when you deal with them. All but the very largest businesses depend on the support of local and provincial government, and that support or lack of hindrance is often instrumental in corporate success. This Chinese, when it comes to large companies, there's a very different mechanism working. When it comes to small companies, it's a very different mechanism working. Unlike India, the processes of if a big company wants to enter India, if they talk to TCS, they have to talk the same thing on offshore rates and things like that. And if they go to another company which is only 1,000 people strong, the American company deals with the same proposition. That's not much different. But in China, it is very different when you talk to different levels of companies. Now, this is a slide which I just want to keep this for you for a minute. Don't assume that all Chinese are on the same side. Chinese people, like all people, are interested in their own private careers, opportunities, and financial benefits. But unlike India, they don't get that freedom to go berserk and make money and be free. I think Vishy and Azam will talk about this later. Don't forget Chinese history, particularly as it may affect the attitudes and sensitivity of people who affect your business. Chinese people are very, very stickler to their history, their story, their part of the story. In India, we can ask people to wear a pant, shirt, and drink wine and change their culture. In China, they will not do it so easily because they are proud of being Chinese. In India, we may be proud of being Indian, but we will cross over to the other side. Don't depend on a change in law and regulations. In China, unlike India, when the government regime changes, a lot of changes happen to benefit the companies. In China, it doesn't happen. The same thing has been going on for many, many years. This first line itself talks about everything. The great power of China and the Chinese commitment. I cannot write same thing like the great power of India and the Indian commitment. This cannot fit. This slide cannot be repeated with the Indian context. So pride is something with the Chinese we should learn how to be proud of their country and how to take things to great heights. China is proud that the market capitalization of its company in energy, telecommunication, banking are among the largest in the world. And these three sectors are going to be the future also of the world. And so rightly so, every country in the world are facing this sort of a situation to grapple the Chinese. So if you look at China now, it's over-dominating and over-persevering in every aspect of life. Every third thing that you see in India will have a Chinese intonation. I will stop here, and I've put a lot of videos for all of you to see, and there's one consolation video at the end. This is where I stop my presentation to come back to you and ask them to speak how, with all these challenges that the Indian government and 70 years of a story, how he could go and succeed in China. Azam, please.
So before that, can I ask Suresh?
I'll share the PPT with everyone. Okay.
Yeah, please close the PPT, sir, so that we can have entire panel on the screen.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, that's fine, sir.
Yeah.
Mr. Suresh, I was wondering if Mr. Subramaniam Ramanathan, Ram sir could speak a little.
Yeah. Okay.
Because
Dr. Ram, Dr. Ram, you speak a little.
Sir.
All of you in LUB, please note, Dr. Ram signifies an academic seniority plus a professional seniority. Okay, he's like a guru, so we give him the first right always.
Guru should be given the first.
But unlike all the other gurus, Dr. Ram has been encouraging me to do more and said, Suresh, go ahead, do it, So that's a small thing which I've been asking others. So Dr. Ram, please, it will be a pleasure. Speak.
Sure. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that you have organized this program, and two of my colleagues are already there with you. And definitely they are the best people to speak on the subject today. You have given a wonderful presentation covering almost all the aspects. Now coming back to my own experience, I can say that since I was the one who was heading the India-China Chamber of Commerce and Industry, we did have a lot of activities in terms of building relationship with China, taking delegation to China, then even starting Mandarin language and teaching a business community plus our own student community. And then we have always made it a point to attend Canton Fair, where quite a good number of Indian businessmen used to participate. And even when Chinese they come to our exhibitions, we make it a point to meet them, and then we also invite our Indian entrepreneurs to come to these stalls and discuss the business prospects, etc. So, as you rightly mentioned, they are very focused and they won't deviate from anything other than the business they are in. And that is the greatest strength they have. And they are very proud of it, that even though they have that kind of a regimentation, but they are very proud of it. It's not that they regret about it. And the kind of commitment, because we, myself, Azam, when we have gone with the delegation and the factories that we visited, and the kind of discipline that we are seeing, here, if anybody comes, all of us will be leaving the work and going and seeing. It's nothing like that. And the kind of factories they have, it runs into miles. So you cannot just visit one factory in a day and come. It's that difficult. So that's how the things are. So there is a lot of things we can learn in terms of the kind of work ethics, the discipline. Of course, India has got its own talent. India is definitely known for its IT and IT related aspects, and that is where our strength is. So we are known for the intellectual uh, aspects of things that we do, and we have been quite successful in that. So I think with this, I will ask Azam to really take over. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
First of all, let me tell you what I've been doing in China. I was literally first into trading of furniture hardware and furniture machineries. Like we had a furniture factory in Pune. I'm basically from Pune. So that's how it all started in 2000 when we used to do trading with China. And then I came to know that the communication was a bigger problem. So I started learning Chinese. And then we started our own travel company where we helped business community from India to go to China and to understand how the Chinese, the factories they work. And then we slowly started the study tours for the MBA students who are the future managers in India. So like this, it all started. And I'll just share my own personal experience, what I've seen. So I'll just share with you what are the advantages of China and what are the disadvantages of China, like where the Chinese lack and where they are good at. Now, if you know, India and China both are the agriculture-based countries, but China's growth is partly shifting from agriculture to manufacturing. If you have seen these 15, 20 years, they have shifted from agriculture to manufacturing. Now, why is China so good? If you see the advantages, they have the infrastructure, they have the skilled labor, the health control, and China has already become the manufacturing hub of the world. Now, if you see the infrastructure for a factory setup is available. I'm sorry.
Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, all infrastructure for a factory setup is available. I mean to say land, electricity, road, and water. I'm sure Mr. Vishwanath will also agree with me. He has been to China so many times. So there is no problem with land, electricity, road, and water. Anywhere you go to a smallest city, two-tier city, or three-tier city, all this is available. So government has made these things available over there. Secondly, if you see the labor, they have the high-skilled labor. They have strong work ethics and low labor cost. And they don't have unions. You're not allowed to have unions. You're not allowed to ask for bonuses if you get a big order. So that is the system how they work. These are all the advantages of China. If you see the markets, they can supply economies of scale and to bring the price down. So it has a growing domestic market also. So that's why they can produce more. They can produce in volumes, and that's how they bring the price down. Now, if you see the health of the workers' health and safety laws are not as stringent as in the West. So normally workers are not as insured as we all think. So it's a different story in China. Now, if you see why they are so good at it, they have a global online connect already. They have the information technology already joined with their manufacturing. And they also have a global offline connect. So online connect and offline connect both are there. And if you see the top Forbes list, I mean the top 10 Chinese, rich Chinese, half of them are from the IT. So I'll give you an example. You all know Ma Yun or Jack Ma, who leads Alibaba. Then you have Ma Huateng, who leads Tencent and WeChat. Then you have Chang Yiming, who leads TikTok. Then you have Cheng Huang, who leads, Pinduoduo. Pinduoduo is a domestic, general merchandise website, which is only in China. But then it collects buyers from scattered region and they offer you a wholesale price to the retail buyer. That's how they have, taken over the market. Another one is Mr. Lading, who is into games. So all these online gaming and all these online portals, they are connected with all these, exports. So that's how China got strong with both the things, like in manufacturing also, in the IT service also. So what I mean to say, an export-oriented China depends on the internet to reach the world. That is how, they have come up. Now, if we talk about the disadvantages of China, they have three major disadvantages, what I've seen. One is the language. The import figures, normally when you import or export with China, you come to know that language is a bigger problem, and they also hide their many mistakes behind this. I mean, they will just play like they don't understand, but every Chinese, maybe their spoken is not very good, but their written is really good. They can understand everything. They'll just play cool that they don't understand. Another thing is certifications, or, I can say like quality products. They don't make quality products. They don't make high-end products. These are all like low-end products, or, there are no certifications to these products. The third thing is internet is controlled. Within China, you cannot see any other global website. So if I'm a seller, if I'm a portal, not from China, I cannot access that website. So if you want to sell to China, it is very difficult to sell to China, because then your website doesn't open in China. There are so many jammers and so many scrutinies done about the foreign websites that you cannot literally, go to a Chinese website and just try to sell your products in China. I will tell you my personal experience. The Chinese in China really don't like Chinese products. They like, imported products. That's why what we are doing now is we are working on how to sell to China. So imiting China is one good thing, but we should also think of how to sell to China and what things that we should sell to China. China is also looking to the world to actually import things. So right now what we are doing is we are trying to find, what all we can actually sell to China. Not only our minerals and raw material, but also few products that we can add value to our own products and then sell. So this is something that I can share. Slowly, when we have question and answer, I'll try to share more. And I think Mr. Vishwanathan, if you could add something to, my little speech, it will be good.
Yeah, I will add on to what Azam just said a little bit, especially with reference to what he said, the language barriers which create a lot of problem. And what he correctly said is that the Chinese languages, but they basically make an effort to show that they do not understand English language. I mean, I recollect an experience way back when I started operations of almost about 20 years back, which I was sharing with Suresh also. We were actually doing an order for Walmart, and we were buying the fabric from Walmart, getting it converted into home furnishings here in India, and then supplying to Walmart. And the order was a very huge quantity. It was per color, it was about 550,000 meters. We wanted to actually get it at a specific price, but the Chinese were always quoting about 20% more than what we expected on the price. We kept telling them that the order is huge and that it was a very large quantity of 550,000 meters, but they always kept saying it is not possible. And they kept saying that we will give you the delivery in 15 days. Now, anybody who understands textile technology would also understand that making a quantity of 550,000 meters in 15 days is sometimes extremely difficult, when what would have normally been a 45 days period. Finally, we realized that the best way to do it is to talk to them in their Chinese language. And when we went and told them that we actually want Wu Shi Wu Wan Nia, which is actually 550,000 meters in Chinese, they immediately jumped up and said, okay, this is what you want. Now we'll give you in 45 days, and the prices were slashed down by 15%. So China is one place where it becomes mandatory for you to be able to at least understand the numbers. The Chinese method of numbering is far different from the English method of numbering, when we talk about lakhs and we talk about 10,000, the Chinese have 10,000, they do not have a lakh. Am I right, Azam?
Yeah, yeah.
They
They
don't
keep
have a
on
lakh,
multiplying 10,000.
10,000. The multiplication of 10,000 is more important, and that is how they. When it comes to maybe a 500,000, it becomes a tens of a 10,000. Then it becomes 550, maybe a 5 million. It becomes a hundreds of a 10,000, and the method of language is totally different. The method of numbering is different. Now, Azam also mentioned there is something very crucial about internet control. Now, we would have all noticed what has happened in the past 1 year with the COVID experiences. There is nothing that has come out of China in terms of what is exactly the magnitude of the deaths, the magnitude of the cases, the viruses, everything. Azam was in China when this entire thing happened, and he will possibly tell you that every single house in Beijing was shut down. There were iron bars put in front of the house so that nobody could come out of their houses to be even able to buy a milk or a vegetable, and everything was basically given to their household for the whole week. Am I right, Azam?
Yes, actually in Wuhan, they had welded their house from the outside. So it was like welding done, and then you couldn't come out for a month. The whole rationing was done one time, and whatever you have to do it inside.
So that sort of a thing is, many would find it difficult for that to happen in India, even during these COVID terms. What happens is that in India, we have lockdowns, but the lockdowns are perfunctory. And what essentially happens is that you will find people all over the place, whether it is Bangalore, Hosur, or everywhere for that matter. So this is something which the discipline that you will find in a Chinese is something that is not found in either a European or an Indian or an American. The Chinese discipline is got to be believed, got to be seen to be believed. Azam also mentioned something about agriculture. Yes, agriculture was one of the predominant economies of China. It continues to be a major chunk, though manufacturing and trading has taken over from agriculture. But if you look at the size of agriculture of a Chinese agricultural size, you will find that the agricultural growth that they have is brilliant. What they do in agriculture also is phenomenal. They continue to have large swaths of land. They continue to cover these lands with greenhouse effects and grow vegetables and other agricultural products within that particular land with the help of proper watering, with the help of proper light, with the help of proper all facilities that are required for agriculture. Today, in terms of agriculture, they would possibly be the largest in the world in terms of any single agricultural items that are there. Am I right, Azam?
Yeah, I agree.
True. In fact, there's a video on this vegetation also.
Yeah. So what is essentially required is, yeah. Hello, there was.
Okay, till then, let me share you one of my experience when it comes to agriculture. Sorry. Hello.
Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So I'll share you an experience when you talk about agriculture. Agriculture actually in China is an industry.
Yes.
They operate it like an industry. We had taken 400 Indian farmers from Maharashtra to study a farmer study tour. We went on a farmer study tour to study how the Chinese, do the agriculture, how they handle the agriculture. So we took them to a village. This village was, the whole village was producing only one crop. That was wheat. Now, how they work was the village panchayat, they invest the money in the harvesting machine and the seeds. Now, the village panchayat will rent these harvesting machines to these farmers. who don't have their own land. It is all on lease. Okay, so you don't have your own land, you don't have your own machinery. Seeds are given by one body, and the crop is also taken by that body. So the rates don't fluctuate. You get all the technology what you need. Water, electricity is already available by the government. So they work like, pack of dogs. They can hunt anybody and they can do anything. This is how the Chinese operate. Now I went to a rice farm. When we took these farmers,
I'll just interrupt you for a minute, Azam. In India, there is only one company which you can possibly think of having that cooperative sector business, which is Amul. Excepting Amul, I don't think any other company has been able to create that sort of a model on which they can grow exponentially.
Yeah. So what I mean to say is we need to learn from Chinese. The whole objective is to imiting China. So what we can do is we can take whatever is good from China in their fields, whatever field we are into, in whatever businesses we are, whatever experience we have, we can share you. And like what I was saying, in these rice farms, they used to put crabs. Now, why were they putting crabs in these rice fields? We couldn't know. So we asked them. So they said the crabs eat only the weeds. And then the rice crop is also grown and the crabs also grow. So they sell the crabs also and they sell the rice also. That's how they work. So this is all by experience we came to know. Thank you.
So, as Suresh correctly put it a little time back when he put up on his slides, mimicking China in terms of the good aspects of China are very important. But unfortunately, as far as India is concerned, we do not operate on a communist level. We operate on a capitalist level, on a socialist level. As a result of which, it is to each his own in this country. It is not that we will have a conglomerate of people, so a complete group of people out here who can possibly work on certain aspects of the business.
And Vishy, that is what our plan is with the present LUB team. We are discussing that, how to become a conglomerate. That said, Sri Lalita.
I can add on to it from my aspect of business. For example, when a company like Gap or a company like Louis Philippe or a company which is Next would place an order, they would place close to 250,000, 300,000 pieces of garments. Now, it is not necessary that all the 300,000 garments are produced within the same factory under the same shed. It could be possibly given to a few of them. And what happens is, if the share of the profits is taken care of by everybody, having the same amount of workforces and maybe possibly having smaller labor laws, everything, it would be much easier to handle it, which is what the Chinese do. You give a Chinese an order in, let's say, Jiangsu province, the same guy would possibly go across to Guangzhou to be 20 times away.
Vishy, put a video off.
The order to somebody else.
Vishy, put a video off. Okay, speak.
Yeah. So, and that is exactly what the Chinese do.
Yes. True. Tomorrow also Sri Lalita is going to speak, so I'll ask her to speak briefly now about how the Chinese actually work through prison. That's one topic which she has been talking to me a lot about in the past few months. Briefly, 2-3 lines on how the Chinese labor operate. The dark side,
Yeah. As far as I'm concerned, when I'm looking at the points, all the points which are very, very relevant. Personally, what Azam sir saying and Vishwanathan sir saying, I agree with all of them that we cannot imitate at this point, because the results that what we are seeing of China is not for one day. It's last 25 years. So we have lost a lot of time already. The way they have planned, we couldn't and we cannot. That's a very straight statement, because looking at the research. But the dark side of issues, as you said, labor laws. Since I've worked with Japanese and Koreans, and China is a bit of more of a similarities of a Confucius ethics. It's like a more of a discipline, a fear for the person who is ruling the country. It's more on a higher side, which is not there in India. So making people work for so long hours is not possible. So if you see the captive audience or the captive people, that the way the prison factories do work, the system called Laogai system, which is a very research topic of mine, it's similar to the communist, what Vishwanath sir was saying, that we cannot operate like a communist level. So the heights of communist process of using the captive humans is into multifold that you cannot understand. So whatever the prison factories that I'm talking, anyone who's raising voice against China, against the government, he becomes the political prisoner, and there are no records of it, and you will be there forever. No one knows how you are being picked up. And then what happens? You are a captive audience for the government. So the state government, that is the state-owned factories, all the prisons do have their own second name. They are being producing. You name any product they produce, big machines to small staples to anything. So all the one point Azam sir was saying, that every exports, details that you have a connectivity of the exports and imports is through internet. So if you go to internet and sourcing material, most of the goods that you are getting, you don't know where is it coming from. You don't know where is it coming from. So that is where NAFTA, that is where Walmart, that is where European goods, all the retail thing, like the Primark of high streets of London, all of them started looking at where is it coming from. So of course they do have concerns that they don't want to get these goods because they're not clean. They're coming from the dirty place where prisoners are being made to work, 33 people, 40 people being put into a big room, and then they work like hell, and everything is being given by the state-owned thing. Nothing is expensive because it's all resources being done. So these are the situations that we cannot actually mimic, and it is not in our control. And that is where a toothbrush which comes for less than 50 cents, India cannot make that. Not India, anyone. Because we don't have, as you said, there is no union. How interesting point it is. And you cannot even imagine any country without any union, except in North Korea. Right? So no union, nothing. Labor laws are so everybody, including ILO, International Labour Organization, also knows what is happening. There is BBC documentaries about what these if you go to Paris, if you go to London, if you're buying any souvenir, that souvenir is definitely made only from China. And mostly 75 to 80% of those souvenirs which is coming into the world, whether it's Walmart or whether it is Tesco, it's coming from these prison factories. So every prison is having a backup factory, and that is where the cheap products do come. This is a very dark secret or a side of it, and nobody can talk about it. I see, if I really want to talk about Laogai system, my computer, my details, my research, everything can be tracked. If at all I'm really making more noise about it, right? So it's only a research. It's only a research point of it. So it's like that, and then we cannot do that kind of mimicking. So that is where the dark secrets of it. Let it be any fake products or duplicate products. Everybody is worried about it, but nobody can point out because the system is so tight. The system is so tight that nobody can investigate also. We don't have, even if I'm saying that I'm researching on it, I have only very few articles and a few people, those have migrated from China to Australia or to UK or to US. Those who know the system, they can give me some articles. That's how I get some information. Otherwise, you don't get any information about the Laogai system. And all the sovereign wealth fund, that is today's after 2007, China's investment corporation that we talk about, it is purchasing all the international bonds and making a lot of investments everywhere, throwing its weight around and money around, is just backed by the money which is getting from this kind of so much of exports. The exports that you make, like our Indian make, is so different from the Chinese exports, because 70% of exports are also coming from the prison factories.
Thank you, Srilita, and you can change your name for tomorrow's session as Vidya so that nobody will know that you spoke today. Uh, okay, now what we will do is the questions can be done in multifaceted manner. Sri Shekhar, you can extend time. I think you have purchased the Google Meet time in case it's required. Otherwise, more questions can be taken individually. The email addresses and phone numbers are there. So Shekhar, any questions now, particularly to individuals? Again, as I said, the only formula to mimic China, only way. I've said so many points. The only way we can't go to prisons, maybe we can do some health prison reforms and make factories there, so that we will have better Indians coming out from the prisons with a lot of livelihood. But the only way is to become strong in numbers. More factories getting together, trying to produce the same items, more shifts, 3 shifts maybe, and beat the Chinese on the volume game. That's the only way out. I'm very sure we can make a humble start with LUB making that sort of taking that initiative. We are there to support. Questions now, please.
Mr. Raju has raised his hand, sir. Mr. Raju, please go ahead.
Everybody, good evening.
Yeah.
This is
Good evening.
Raju from Bangalore.
Please
Sir,
go ahead, Mr. Raju.
I am last 12 years. I am importing goods from China, like a garment accessories. You know, the buttons, buckle like a garment, like a big brand H&M, Lee, Wrangler, the Marker Spencer. These are many goods from the market, but no one making in India. So last 1 year, I am trying to do in India, but couldn't happen because all the machinery coming to the from the Chinese only. One thing, and here also banks also not supporting. I have in experience in this line 25 years because I have a small factory in Bangalore also. I have small industry of garment accessory making because we not updated like a Chinese. So if anybody can be help it out in this, sure I can help it out in this because I have lot of 25 years experience in garment field, buttons making. Even though in China I have many factories, I know I have visited more than 35 times in China last 10 years, sir.
What is your question, Mr. Raju?
Sir, the question is, somebody have any plan to make the plant here because it's a very big investment. Sir has told we want to make a factories in India. So somebody will get like this. I will support them.
Okay, that's a good information, Mr. Raju. I think Vishwanath is the right person because he's in touch with the textiles business. And Ramchandran is because of his association with Indo-China Chamber. We'll find out who are the investors. We'll connect them with you. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Definitely, Mr. Raju. Put your credentials, put your details out to us.
Yes, sir. Definitely, I will give it in a LUB, sir. If
Thank
someone
you.
is connected,
Yes.
surely I will help for my country, sir. Sure.
Thank you very much, Raju.
Because, you know, 2,000, more than 3,000 crores is importing goods from China, sir.
In fact, Raju, I will put it the other way for you. Vishwanath is not connected with LUB, but with you in LUB, Vishwanath will connect with you, and all those like-minded people in LUB can form a huge thing for textiles. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Any other
Sure.
questions?
Mr.
Thank you,
Praveen,
Mr. Raju.
Thank you, Vishik.
Mr. Praveen, please go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Suresh, good evening.
Hi, Praveen.
And good evening. And Mr. Azam Sheikh, good evening. I'm Shil. Very insightful what are inputs for the current scenario of the industries. All that I have a small humble submission is, well, I was a past secretary of Karnataka Small Scale Industry.
Can you mute your video? If you mute your video, your audio quality will become better.
I was a past secretary of Karnataka Small Scale Industry Association. Am I audible?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, you are.
Majority of our industry base is micro, tiny and micro industry. On a scale of 100, we can say about 70 plus are micro and tiny industries. They have their own difficulties. Just by the virtue of, choosing a career, they have come into the industries. Otherwise, they have lost the strengths of investment. They have lost the strength of networking. They have lost the strength of finances, innovation, and upskilling. Now, this is the basic issues of more than 70% of the current industries in India per se. Now, what I would request is, if you look at the Chinese perspective, everywhere it is the government. Out of all your speakers, I could understand one thing in common is there is a government's iron hand behind the success of every business there. I would like to ask you one small question. If the government is doing everything in there, where is the question of the entrepreneurship? Is there a spirit of entrepreneurship in China? First question. Is there an entrepreneurship existing in China? First thing. Like how we see in India, even an employee becomes an employer and he generates 20, 30 employments. Point one. And second thing is there an entrepreneur's democracy? Like how we have a democracy in India, even an owner can take a lot of calls. I don't think they can do it. And if that Chinese model is something which we should implement in the forward world, can India do it? Or should we do it? First question is, should we do this, implement this Chinese model? Is it good? Because what Madam was telling, she used a word called the prison type of business. Because you people are already into business from past 20, 30 years in China. Sir, do you think having known our country, having known the background of our country's people's mindset, do you think it is ethical to do a smart copying from China? So these are my three questions. So
I'll answer only one line. I'll ask Vishwanath and other three to answer your question because I'll detail one.
Yeah.
In China, entrepreneurship is only to the extent that the government can control that entrepreneur. If you look at Jack Ma's recent problem, he was billionaire. He was, because of some utterances, he was put in prison or he went out, blacked out. So it's very easy to black out a person. Yeah, we should take over.
I will answer the first question of Praveen. Praveen, as far as China is concerned, entrepreneurship definitely does exist. See, you must understand one thing, that the Chinese have a lot of brains. The Chinese travel a lot. There are a lot of these people who are moneyed, who travel a lot, who pick up nuances from various parts of the world, especially the European culture. And they come back and try to implement those aspects of the business in China. Yes, they definitely have entrepreneurial abilities.
Put a video off.
But when it comes to, yeah, but I will also tell you one thing very clearly. The fact remains that entrepreneurship is not only plain entrepreneurship coupled with the capitalism of the entrepreneur per se. The entrepreneur with his model would then go to the government to be able to get space, to be able to get his factory, to be able to locate himself in an industrial zone. He will be provided with people. All that is, see, he will put in just part of the money. But the major chunk of the money is provided from banks at a rate of interest which is as good as 4.5%. Correct me if I am wrong, Azam, is that 4.5%? Has it now gone up to 6%?
No, what you're saying is right.
Yeah, so funds per se is not a difficult proposition for a Chinese entrepreneur. Now, once the entrepreneur starts, let's take the case of Jack Ma, which Suresh correctly put it. Jack Ma was an entrepreneur who created this mammoth giant called Alibaba. Alibaba is now across the world in almost all parts of the globe. You can order for a product from Alibaba in Alibaba from US. You can order it from Germany. You can order it from Czechoslovakia. You can order it from Yugoslavia, and it will be delivered to you without any issues. But look at finally what happened to Jack Ma. The government put the ban on Jack Ma. He's been hauled up. So the government does control the business completely. Entrepreneurship abilities is something which they allow it to grow as long as capitalism and communism go hand in hand with each other. Once you try to show that you are a smart aleck, you're brought to size.
And another thing Vishy and me discussed was the number of people entering Harvard. The number of Chinese people who has outsmarted the Harvard recruitment system. They are entering in large numbers in the top management colleges. So if you look at Chinese enterprise, it's not only the entrepreneurship in starting a business, even penetrating the intellectual ecosystem of education. Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of you will possibly understand that there are no such thing as IPR as far as China is concerned. China is allowed to copy anything and everything in the world, be it a power plant, be it an F-22 or whatever you want. I mean, anything and everything that you want, China has the ability to copy.
techs, yes, including the space and defense. Yeah, Azam.
Yeah.
Azam, you wanted to say something.
Yeah. So, Mr. Praveen, let me share you, when you talk about the small and micro size, companies, how do Chinese help? Now, I'll just share you what I've seen in China. Now, suppose normally they work in sectors. So suppose if it is Shantou, so it will be a GD of all the textiles. So they work in, pockets. So one pocket is specialized for one product. Now, suppose we have a pocket of, say, small and medium enterprises. They are making an IR monitor. Like you see the body temperature monitors, what we see.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we know that the whole thing is very cheap. The outer part is very cheap. But the only technology, that chip that actually shows you your body temperature, that somebody has made it, it's patented, and it's very expensive. Right?
Yeah.
So the government will invest in that patented technology and will share it with all the micro SMEs who are manufacturing it. They'll give it to everybody. The same thing will happen with any other mold. Supposing a small and micro unit cannot afford a mold, the government will invest into that mold and will actually sell it. They're not going to give it for free. They'll actually do business with their own small and micro units. So that's how they work in groups. The government also works. The local the government will work, means the central government will give some subsidy, local government will give some subsidy, and they buy the technology and sell to these small and medium enterprises. Now what these small units will do, they get benefit of all these new technologies or patented technologies which they themselves cannot afford. That's how they make these products in huge quantities at low cost. So that's how these small and medium micro SMEs or units are supported by the government.
Azam sir, just to add, and Suresh sir, do you think down the line, as Srilata madam said, 20 years, let us start at least a cluster model, which is absolutely a fantastic failure in our country. Even now, we have not been able to find out a formula, working groups, how we can. Now, do you think this model, if I take it as a cluster one, do you think is applicable to our Indian conditions, the current scenario?
Yeah, true. It is working out.
Praveen, I beg to differ, Praveen.
In Vapi, there is an industrial cluster for dyes and intermediates. In Surat, there is a huge cluster for only what you call it, dyeing the yarn. There's a dip, dye, and yarning process in Surat. That's a huge street which is only doing that. So the clusters are already there. If you look at diamond, there's a cluster. If you look at metals, there's a cluster. I'm talking of jewelry in Indore and Rajasthan. If you look at the spices corridor, which is now huge clusters in various pockets, and the Modi government has done lots of these things, including the effluent treatment plant for companies which are not same. For that cluster also, is helping them for the effluent. In India, what happens is, unlike China, where the government supports the entrepreneurship, when the new government forms, if you are my uncle, I'm able to start an industry fast because you are the minister. And here also the government is only supporting me, but it is a favoritism, not for everybody. It's not decentralized. Yeah.
Sir,
and secondly, Praveen, I'd like to interrupt one more thing. Is this cluster thing is something that was not new to India. Mr. Amul, Mr. Kurian was the first person to start this concept of a cluster even before it became predominant in China. Much before it became predominant in China. The only difference is that we did not take this forward for other industries. Now, if we had taken this forward for maybe a textile industry, or we had taken it forward for other industries also, my food processing industries, our ability to grow would have been far better. I mean, let us be very clear about one thing. I've interacted with the Chinese for close to over 22 years. And in these 22 years, I find that our ability to think rationally is far better than the ability of a Chinese to think rationally. Correct me if I'm wrong, Azam.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, Mr. Narayan.
So it is only that we are not getting this necessary support back end from the governments, whether it is state governments, whether it is provincial governments, and also the fact that we have unfortunately got this system of 5 years. When 5 years you have the BJP in Karnataka, the next 5 years you'll have Congress in Karnataka, 5 years you'll have AIDMK in Tamil Nadu, the next 5 years you have DMK in Tamil Nadu. That concept is something where whatever good has been done in the last 5 years will be pulled back for the next 5 years.
Yeah, I do.
Sir, I'm Narayan Prasanna, General Secretary of Lagudyog Bharati. Sir,
Yeah.
it was a very good discussion from a bunch of speakers on Chinese manufacturing model. I thank Mr. Suresh Iyer, Dr. Ramchandran, Sheikh Azam, Vishwanathan Iyer, and Sri Lalita. Thank you once again for the Chinese business model elaborations. In India, how can we or Indian companies can adopt this model, or how we can compete with China? What are the implementations we have to do? See, for Chinese, the government is involved with the capital infusion or either IP support, many things. Even in skills and labor laws, large volume potentials, they have such kind of support from the government, and the labor laws, such kind of support is there from the government side. But in India, with our present policy, how we can face this and go ahead with the Chinese competitions?
I will make one quick point, then I'll ask others to come because they can talk from the Chinese point of view. I'm talking from a strategy point of view. Since you are the president and key person for this LUB representing 1,000 members, you have an equal right to go to the Karnataka government and tell them, can you lease us a land for 99 years? In Karnataka, there's a lot of land available. Now starts the mimicking of Chinese model. China also has land, they give it to somebody. So us, like China is giving land, so you also give us some 100 acres. In that 100 acres, put sheds, put the factories, put whatever. Now, whatever is not moving for somebody can move it there. Now, that company which is moving their factory into that zone, they want to give up, they want to diversify, whatever. This 100 acres now should be modeled around China. What is the meaning? Yesterday we were talking, in past 25 years, we have been discussing how China companies employ their people and put their people near the factories in sort of a bunk beds and huge houses. In one small apartment, 1 BHK, there will be 20 people staying in bunk beds. So can we have a separate China mimicking zone in Karnataka where everything is run to Chinese model? I think that, for example, if the China company is getting up at 8 o'clock and starting the factory, we should also do the same thing in that zone, in that 100-acre zone. Then we have, and we can do it because the Indian will have a new way of doing business. They will all be enthusiastic. So this will run at least for 1-2 years. Later on, the problems of China will come, set in, and then they will say, let's go back to the Indian. But then what will happen? That 100 acres would have been converted into a fantastic industrial area. So if you want to mimic, you can start with the actual way of government interference or help. Azam sir and Vishwanath can add value to it.
So what about the labor policies, finance,
yes,
funding,
labor, yes, I've
raw material price?
Last year I said the labor policies that as far as the special economic zone rules are concerned, Indian government cannot go into the SEZ and dictate the policies there in India. SEZ is considered as a foreign zone. Same way, this particular 100-acre plot could be designated as a special model where anything that happens there will be according to Chinese model. So the labor laws, everything. So so those who are see, there are many people who want to just work. They are not working at all. So they get some salary, they'll be happy. If they get food, they'll be happy. So there are instances where such people can be employed. Old people, they can still work. So if there is a method to ask the government to have a model, we don't call it actual working. Once you have that model which is working, then we can replicate it. If that success comes, I think even Chinese will come themselves and said, please give us land, we'll invest here only.
Suresh, similar models being submitted to central government or government of Karnataka?
No, I made a document last year and I've kept it with me. I wanted you to take it up, but this time I can make a formal document and submit to you.
So most of the time, as you rightly said, since the success of China, it is not the bottom-up approach. We industrialists cannot go and approach the government. It is a government.
Why not? Why not?
No,
you can approach the government.
No, I don't think that's right, Praveen. What is very clear is, see, if the industrialists have a set pattern and a model, I think they can always approach the government to get this organized. I'll add on to what Suresh said a little while back. When he said that, India has a lot of rural population which would like to start working in closer to the cities or in the cities or in a zone which is a dedicated manufacturing zone. Now, in India, you will find that if you take somebody from the rural, let's say from Rajasthan or somebody, they will normally come lock, stock, and barrel with their entire family and settle in the place like Bangalore. In China, you will observe the Chinese economy. If you people have understood what China is, during the period of the New Year and during the period of the Lunar Festival, there is a major problem of getting tickets in railway trains across China, flights across China, because everybody wants to go back to their villages. The village culture actually comes to the city culture because the village people from the village actually go to the cities to be able to create jobs for themselves, create manufacturing bases, and do work there. They don't get their entire family along with them. They are put up in, as Suresh correctly said, they are put up in ghettos-like situations. One building housing 5,000 people, and this I'm talking about not small scale and medium scale enterprises. I'm talking of even large corporations. Large corporations will have complete setup of housing facilities within the premises, and you will find at 8 o'clock in the morning, all of them getting out from their houses, going inside the factory, working till 5 o'clock, working till 6 o'clock, going back, and the next batch coming back at 6 o'clock. So this is something which,
Yeah, Rishi, what you're saying is the same thing what is happening in the software industry. If you look at why is Indian software industry successful? Because the Americans cannot work at $5 per hour where the Americans need $25 per hour. And when we work at $5 per hour, we also work at the same American timings in the night to suit them so that our call centers work like that. So we are paid less as per as America. Who's going to fight? Can we tell the Indian companies pay according to the American but the Americans are fighting there. Are they fighting? Pay the Indians also like Americans? So this is when it comes to business where the labor is cheap, there is method of organizing that labor. And if you look at all the TCS, Infosys buildings, they're as good as Chinese factories only. Sorry.
Absolutely, yes.
They are making more money. That's another story. Yes. Have I answered, Praveen? We can do it and propose to the government. Yes.
Hey, now, new insights. Thank you, Vishwanath sir.
Can we take a question from Mr. Girish Gumaste, please?
Yeah, please.
Sir, am I audible?
Yeah.
Please go ahead,
Yes,
sir.
yes, sir.
Okay. See, now I like to come to the industries of micro and small industries problem. Is the China also has the taxation process different for
Their accounting practices are not there at all. You will not know. I will not know. It is
No.
exposed.
There are no. Suresh, sorry. I will explain this better. There are taxation practices in various provinces, and each province has their own facility of taxation. Azam, bear me out if I'm wrong. Just correct me if I'm wrong. Now, you will find that some provinces work on a principle of cost plus tax, while some provinces work on a principle of income over cost tax. So that is something, the income over cost tax is what is called as an income tax like what we have. While there are many provinces, for example, Zhejiang province, they work strictly on a process of cost. So if your cost is, let's say, 10 RMB, then you pay maybe 1 RMB or 1.7 RMB as a tax directly to this. And whether you sell it at 20 or you sell it at 50, it doesn't make a difference to them.
But there is no compulsions. There's no hard rule. They don't penalize people if they don't pay tax.
No, they do penalize people. They do penalize people. The provincial.
Then what is the earning for the government, sir?
The earnings for the government is very clear. See, as far as China and India is concerned, as far as financial accounting is concerned, one thing is very clear: the amount of black money which exists in India is the same or possibly more that exists in China. China people, they avoid taxes, not that they don't avoid taxes. The local taxes for any product varies at about 17%. Am I right, Sheikh? Azam?
Yes.
17% is the local tax to sell locally. But when you sell to the export market, you get a rebate of 16% on the 17% that you do. You only pay a total of 1% tax. There are certain provinces, like I told you about Zhejiang, where the taxation policy is based on the cost aspect. So if you are direct and indirect cost, when I mean the cost, it is not only direct cost, but it is also indirect cost. So if you're making a payment to, let's say, a 5,000 RMB to your worker, you have to pay tax on that 5,000 RMB, which is normally in the region of about 7% of the tax.
Correct.
We have a
So
question.
that tax is collected upfront.
Yeah, we have a
That
question.
means that each provinces are fixing the taxation process, and there is no like a central or state tax like that.
No, Azam, you would have to answer that question whether there is a central tax.
No,
I'm aware
see,
of provincial taxes.
Yeah, what I am aware also of the provincial tax only. But if you see Zhejiang province, what you gave the example was, why they have this product tax is because Zhejiang, you know, they have a lot of small enterprises, small units, some more, and they are all export oriented. Like women in Zhejiang will make a handkerchief and they will always try to export. So Zhejiang is famous for small commodity exports. So that's why they have implemented this product tax onto Zhejiang province.
Cost.
Yeah. My other question is
Zhejiang is possibly one of the richest provinces of China.
Yeah, after Fujian.
Along with Jiangsu.
Fujian.
After Fujian.
Then my other question is that, see, what are the marketing support from the province or from the central government of the China for export oriented products or export promotion council like that? Because what we heard, even I visited twice to China, and I also exhibited in Thailand and Singapore like that. What we heard is the total government is giving the support of finance, whatever the expenditures of the exhibitions, totally it is covered by either province or central government. I don't know exactly, but is it right?
Yeah, I'll give you the one line and then I'll hand it over to Mr. Ramchandran. Indo-China Chamber is...
Mr. Azam Sheikh would be the right person to answer this.
No, I'm just saying...
much more about it.
Correct. I want the right answer, but before that, we ourselves have marketed for China because everybody goes and says China is cheap, so we all go and buy. That is a half marketing done. So we don't need to sell for China. The whole world is looking at China as a low-cost manufacturer. That is a marketing slogan by itself, one. Now let's Sheikh Azam talk about the internal aspects of promotion.
Girish sir.
Yes, sir.
Let me explain you how the Chinese export. Now the whole thing of export from China started in 2003. 2003, they actually started to, export products. So if you see our bilateral figures also, it has actually started from 2003. Now how it works is, Chinese government, they have something called a subsidy. Subsidy for participation at international fairs. Now, apart from the central government subsidy, the state government also gives subsidies to its own units, its own people, own factories who want to go abroad and participate. Now, sometimes the subsidy could range from 70% to 30%. Okay.
Yeah.
So the Chinese have a body called as CCPIT, that is Chinese Council for Promotion of International Trade. This body has got a presence in every city of China. Any exhibition organizer who wants the Chinese participants to come has to register their event into that CCPIT calendar. Once that event is registered on their calendar, that event will get a subsidy. Subsidy means you first pay, you participate at the fair, you will get the reimbursement of all the expenses that you have done. And the CCPIT will take care of whether this factory or this exhibitor is genuine, not genuine. A person from the CCPIT will also, come with the whole exhibition delegation So that's how the whole subsidy works. I think in India also we have this, but you know, it has still to be controlled. It has to reach everybody who is export oriented.
Yes, we have that, but it is very limited, as you say. But one more point I like to add here is that, see, is there any, like our Gujarat and Punjab, Coimbatore, I feel that these particular cities or states, they are trying to implement particularly this China model, and I think they are succeeding in some part of it. Why? Because if you ask any one product, in total assembly product, one part of the assembly is manufactured by one person. There is not branded, and the assembly person will take all the materials, all the particular items from them, and he assemble it, and only the branding or name will be done by him. This is what I found. And is it same case in China also?
Yes, sir, same. It is because, and they are much more advanced than us.
Much more
advanced. Like if I am sure Mr. Vishwanathan has got a very high experience when he sees textiles. They can label you any brand, whatever brand you need. The labeling machines are different.
And
the problem.
And I'll tell you, there's somebody who just spoke a little while back regarding textile accessories. I recollect somebody who spoke about textile accessories.
I am Muniraj.
Yeah, Muniraj.
Yes, Raj.
Now let us understand one thing, Mr. Muniraj. Let us assume that you want a button, a metal button of jeans to be made. Believe me, the Chinese will make you sit in the hotel, and within 3 hours they will come up with an artwork and give you the artwork saying this is what you want. And you will not give you one, they will give you 15 artworks and ask you to select from any of the artworks. Does anybody in India is able to do that? In 3 hours, they will be able to give you as many items, as many prototypes that you want of a button or a rivet. Or you can ask any of the people who are in the Bangalore garment industry, and people who are importing from there, whether it is Rick Rogue or whether it is Cactus or anybody, they are all my friends who go to this thing and they buy exclusively from China.
Yeah, Vishy, in Hong Kong, the overnight stitching of blazers and suits in 1992s was very vogue. They come and take the measurement.
That is something which even if you go to Delhi, if you go to that market in Delhi, they give
now
it
it's
to
happening.
You go at maybe at 10 o'clock in the morning, and at 6 o'clock this thing is ready, your garment is ready, your suit is ready.
Correct. So that speed is there with China, which is very true. I've heard of this. Even for our tooling for cosmetics, perfumes, as you rightly said, we sit in the hotel and within 2 hours we get all the things. And for any shape bottle, any shape container, they have got the designs ready.
Absolutely. Their urge to do business is far higher than the urge to do business for us.
Yeah, Mr. Azam.
Sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
One question from me.
Mr.
Presently, what are the commodities or goods they import from outside world?
Yeah, they import every raw material that you can think of. They even import groundnuts, for that matter. From my friends exports that from Gujarat. So if you look at China, they are a funny people. When I did a report on honey for the world, they import everything possible that you can think of. We may not know the quantities, but they do import. But what they export is far ahead. For example, if they feel a raw material is short for them to produce the final goods, they will import that raw material from India. But nevertheless, they have endowed with all the natural and metals that you can think of, that they have it within their own source. So Chinese do import a lot of this vegetation type items. They import a lot of this pesticides from India. They import a lot of chemicals from India. We have these figures which we can talk, and somebody's interested, but they do import. As I said, what exports we have to develop, which Azam was talking about, what Ramchandran will talk, and what Vishwanathan will speak, we are interested because there's a need. They are looking for foreign products. I'm not talking raw materials, finished products. And that is where we should be able to do more. We can help you there.
Is that Indian manufactured products also they would
Yes,
like
we
to
must
import?
explore. We must explore, create a pavilion, create the, as Azam said, it takes a time now, right? Because the political, military, all the standoffs are there, economic standoffs. It may take quite a while, but we should be prepared to look at global market and include China as a part to expand into when we start our production now.
Thank you, sir. I think we need to work on that.
Yes,
We
yes.
have to explore this.
Yes, I will give you the list of products that possibly exporting there, so that all the people in LUB, if they are they have some scope, they can scale up faster. Yeah, Mr.
Azam
Azam.
wanted to say something. Yeah. Azam wanted to say something.
Yeah, Mr. Azam.
Mr. Srinivasan, Mr. Srinivasan, just 1 minute. Azam wanted to say something. Can you just?
I've been waiting for too long. Just a minute.
Yeah, okay, Mr. Srinivasan, speak.
Okay.
Yeah. So, being in the electronic business, we see that as one Tim Cook has stated that if I want a tool maker in Shenzhen in China, I can get 4 football field of tool maker and designer. What are the education standards of these people in China, or the students or the youngsters, which makes a large difference between Indian population and the Chinese?
Hindi, Sanskrit, geography, everything. They just do a diploma, particularly focused to their courses, and they start working. If you look at the employment age, it's at about 13, 14, 15 also, though the world rule says they cannot employ people below 15 years. So they have this focus and intent of studying. They focus only on one subject and they get employed. I think Azam can talk more because he's been in the education field.
No, what you said is right. They don't have any special, education. They have these like a polytechnical colleges. They have these skill colleges where they get this education, and then immediately they get interns or practice at these units who pick them before they graduate.
Correct. They don't wait for a degree like ours.
Yeah. Should I add about that export thing, because that
Please check. Please, Azam.
And what Mr. Girish said, and I think there is a great demand in China for imported goods. Like I said, Chinese people don't like Chinese products. Any help that anybody needs to export from India, I am with you. Any support that you need in China, I'll be happy to help you guys. Now, how it all helps is, Indian government also has subsidy for Indian exporters who could go into exhibitions in China. These exhibitions are focused exhibitions where there are only imported exhibitors, foreign exhibitors who exhibit their products. We also have subsidy. We have special subsidy for women entrepreneurs, and we have, I think, 50% and 100%. It's like that. So if Lagu Udyog can bring all these people who want to export, we can form a delegation, and we can help you with the exhibit profile also, which profiles can work, which exhibits can work, and we could design, and I could share you when is the calendar, because no exhibition has stopped in China now. Everything is open.
Yes.
We can go, we can participate. The only thing what we lack is that, that confidence in us that we can sell. We can sell to China. They need us. But the only thing is we should try. We should go all together, make a pavilion. Any Chinese translation, any help in China you need, we are there. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Please, you message your contact details, please, sir.
Yeah,
yes,
it is there in the slides.
We've done it, sir. We've done it, sir.
Mr. Suresh has it. Anything you could link to Mr. Suresh, not a problem.
Absolutely.
We are all together.
We'll share the contact.
And one more thing is, you have to understand one thing, that China, in terms of raw material, China imports raw material for everything from across the globe. But finally, what happens is that the finished products that it exports to the world is far cheaper than the
Raw material.
finished product is far cheaper than the finished product that would be made in various parts of the world. Now, for example, in terms of cotton is exported from India to China, but at the same time, you'll have cotton fabrics, ready-made fabrics coming in from China to India, which will be cheaper than the fabric that is made in India.
Correct. True.
That is a misnomer. I mean, that is something that beats logic, because the cost of manufacturing is going to be the same whether it is India or China, give and take a few percentage points here and there. But finally, when the fabric comes, the fabric lands up with a 20% difference in prices. That is something which nobody can explain to the world.
True, which is very true. I mean, this is what I was telling about the honey product. I did a proof project, and then the honey thing got reported in Financial Express. So, how they beat the world to pricing? But the minute they saw there was a bacterial infestation in India, and then no honey exported from India, what they did was they exported their honey into India and re-exported to USA. So the USA was finding how in that particular year, when there's no possibility of local honey, how did India export? Then they found that there's a Chinese who came into India and re-exported. So they fought a case and they wanted that Chinese honey to be banned. I mean, they are very, very smart. China is not a country or they work like a typical Gujarati boss itself for everything in business, though it may be a military or a economic administrator there. Yeah.
Yeah, sir, please, I want to add some two valid points here, because I had been to China for exporting laser cut components.
Okay.
Knowingly that it is a fraud. Only the fraud I had been to China. Why? Because I want to understand, because that was the first visit to China and I wanted to have the visa, in fact. And I want to understand the companies, how they function in China. I had been to Foshan, that is a
Foshan.
Yeah, Foshan, I had been there. And see what I heard and what I want to bring to notice, that there are a lot of fraud companies and a lot of fraud cases. And also, as you already mentioned in the discussion, that there is a cheatings. These, how can we, India, understand? Because a lot of inquiries will come to India saying that we need so much of quantity, so much of these things, so many things, the importing like that. We will get inquiries. And as Alibaba is only one source, in fact, China is totally depending on Alibaba. And as you well said, in China, no other search engines or nothing will work. Okay. So now, to understand the Chinese companies, that yes, I am talking to the right company, it is not a fraud, or I'm discussing with the right company. So to understand this, our Indian, this is support to understand that, and like that, we required, the Indians, we need the right route to get into that. Please suggest.
See, that's a big problem. We will require a local Chinese help contact, even though we know Chinese. Mr. Ashek has enough contacts there who will help. I'll give you a good example. There were two Chinese twins who used to come to Nigeria when I was there. One of the twins defrauded my distributor, Paul Akajobe, for wheat flour. They said, we will send you the wheat flour machines and things like that. They took $600,000 those days. I'm talking 89, 90s. And they sent stones. And what happened was the twin brother didn't realize that his
Hello.
Sir, it is not audible, sir.
No, I'm saying fraud take place. Let me summarize it differently. Frauds will happen. China inquiry should be dealt very carefully. You need somebody to be in between, otherwise you will get frauded. They will try to open the LC, everything, but you'll not get the money sometimes. But if you are dealing with LC, see that the bank that is there, corresponding bank, whichever is in China, is backed by European bank. Mr. Azam and Vishwanath can tell you more.
Sorry, Mr. Suresh, what happened to those twins? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, sorry. The twin part, what happened was the second twin came to defraud some other Nigerian, and he did not know that his brother had already cheated and gone. My chairman was very powerful, so he was part of the police. So he found this guy in the airport, caught him, and then he said, it is not me, it is my twin brother who actually cheated. So he said, okay, let it be whether your twin brother, you be in jail. Till he comes and gives money, we will not release you. Finally, that money came and this guy was released. So Chinese, so it is difficult to, they will cheat in person, they will cheat you behind, and they are no better or worse than Nigerians. Nigerians do scam only on money, but Chinese will scheme you on the goods.
Yeah, Suresh sir, my small request to Laghu Udyog Bharati, as
Yes.
well as the wonderful speakers, my small request and a suggestion also. Now we
Yes.
have learned the insights of China, the
Yes.
pluses and minuses, and still there is a lot of ambiguity, and there is
Yes.
a huge amount of risk factors. And
Yes.
as Madam was rightly telling, 25 years of all this expertise, they have been able to do something. Now I request Laghu Udyog Bharati to have one more session, maybe tomorrow or the coming days, to sensitize what are the areas where we can probably India can set foot, be it an import or export, and what are the do's and don'ts, and what are the areas of caution, and what is the best, maybe futuristic.
Shortly, we're going to have Mr. Praveen. We're going to have this session. We already
Tomorrow, Sri Lalita is speaking on certain things on same topics. Maybe if there is not those points are not covered, that is why she's not speaking now. She's taken a little. I thank her for her kindness to be not speaking now. But tomorrow she has an extensive session. We are not going to speak. But after that, if you still have doubts, we will enter into small sort of an understanding with LUB. Our team will be available. We'll enter into dialogue with smaller teams and have this as a conference and take it further. This is a small thing which we will do. Yeah.
Can we take one last question, please?
Yeah.
We are already running short of time.
Yeah. Thank you for the extended time. Thank you for the patience.
We can take one last question, please.
Hello, sir. Hello, sir. This is Sandeep.
Yeah.
Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, it's not exactly a question, but my discussion with my German customer and his comparison between China and India. So I will narrate it with you, and you can throw lights on this. What my German customer is telling, if we buy from China, if it has to be delivered, dispatched on 30th April, it will dispatch on 30th April without any fail. But in Indian industry, we have to follow it up. 1 week or 10 days earlier, we have to call him. Then he says, oh, sir, I forget it. I will do it. It's on the way. It's coming. Raw material is not available. Something the story they tell. But when it comes to quality, Chinese quality, first batch will be fantastic. And subsequent supplies, the quality will be deteriorated. But when it's from India, the first qualities will be bad, and subsequently the quality will increases. This is what his statement. Can you throw some light on this? Thank you very much.
You're absolutely true, Mr. Sandeep. The point is, as Suresh put it up in the slide, we have a chalta hai attitude. Unfortunately, the Chinese do not have that attitude. If they give you if you give them a deadline saying this is the last day on which it has to be onboarded on a ship, they will make certain that the container reaches the port at least 3 days before the onboarding. What happens at the port in terms of custom clearance, everything might get delayed. That happens once. It does not happen regularly. It happens once in a blue moon. But 99.9% of the time, they are perfect in their delivery schedules. Well, when we talk about delivery, I don't think we put up a person or we put up a group of people to monitor the process, the work in process, to ensure that we are able to give the product at the right time. We do not take into account the fact that there could be electricity power cuts, there could be somebody not operating on a particular day, machine downtimes. Nothing of that stuff is something that we don't take into account. The Chinese work on a principle where they make certain that everything is accounted for. They make certain that they have leverages of time before they commit to an order.
And they are so smart in committing time that they know whether they can deliver or not, because one unit there will know the functioning of 50 units there. In India, we ourselves will not know how our own unit functions. So when the collectivism there is far ahead in thinking, and they are very smart. Yeah. They are very smart.
But also, I would also like to add on to what Mr. Sandeep said a little while back. The quality, as far as the Chinese are concerned, is not a classification of every container or every consignment. Chinese do not have the ability to say no to any orders. They will never ever say no. If you try to negotiate further with them, they will say yes, but then there is a drop in the quality. If you negotiate further, there'll be a drop in quality further. So it all depends on how you realize what is the potential of a product and what is the price at which is the actual price, because most of us would know what the costings are for a product which is made by China or India. The process is going to be the same. If you realize that you know what your product price is and maybe negotiate 3 or 5% less than that, that still works. But if you realize that your product is 100 rupees and you start negotiating it at 50 rupees, you will get the product at 55 rupees from the Chinese, but you don't know what you will get.
I will give you a good example. In 2004, there was a Chinese exhibition in World Trade Center, Bombay. They displayed two things. One is a cycle at 100 rupees and a mobike at about 1,000 rupees. You'll all laugh, at 10,000 rupees. There's many people started ordering the cycle. And they said, we have only 2 cycles. We will just auction it off or find out take a lot and find out. So somebody in the audience asked, sir, how can you sell such a cheap cycle, 100 rupees? That guy, a Chinese guy, had done some homework. Those days, between Dadar and VT, which is about 12, 13 kilometers, he said, you take the cycle, drive it. If it gets spoiled at Dadar, throw it. Because the taxi fare from VT to Dadar is 200 rupees. Can you believe? He says, buy my cycle, drive it till Dadar, that 10 kilometers. If it works for you, fine. If it doesn't work, throw it, because the taxi fare is 200. That means he's saying it last 2 trips, you have made your money. Our goods are worth the money. They are so fast and so smart in selling these cheap things. You will never know how to convince your buyer. If you can convince your European buyers like this, I think we have become Chinese.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
I think we have completely run out of time. Is there any more questions?
No, absolutely no. I think it's been a pleasure talking on this forum here for both me as well as Azam, Ram sir and Suresh. Thank you all for the...
And Sri Lalita and Deepa.
And Sri Lalita and of course, and thank you all for having heard us out for quite some time.
Thank you, Azam sir, for the Chinese. He brought the Chinese flavor for first time in LUB.
Just share. Thank you. Thank you
all.
Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Azam. Thanks.
All spread the word to attend Sri Lalita's speech tomorrow. It will be continuation of what we...
I would like to inform the participants that tomorrow we have a very important session, which is going to be the continuation of the same topic, India capitalizing on the growing Chinese global nosediving relations amidst COVID-19. This session will be addressed by Dr. Sri Lalita Sagi. Meet you tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
And if Shekhar invites us, we will be there. If Shekhar invites us all, we'll be there as well.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And only during the question answer. And during the question answer only. Yeah, thanks.
You are all. Thank you very much.
Close the session now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.